A two-day NATO summit is underway in the Netherlands with allies convening to discuss the war in Ukraine, though the events in the Middle East are expected to take centre stage. For more, we're joined by Professor of Government at the University of Essex, Natasha Lindstaedt. Professor, good to have you on The World as always. Now, a key focus of this summit was supposed to be the war in Ukraine and showing a united front against Russia, but could it be overshadowed by events in the Middle East?
Well, certainly you would expect that this is going to be part of the discussion with supposedly a ceasefire taking place between Iran and Israel, but this was probably some of the most intense fighting between these two countries ever. And so NATO countries have a vested interest in ensuring stability. So I could imagine that this will be part of the discussion. But as you mentioned, what the NATO meeting is supposed to do is supposed to focus on harmonizing their military spending, trying to get it up to 5% of GDP, and to try to show a united force against Russia, that they remain committed to supporting Ukraine, that they see, and if we were to look back at the summit that took place last year, that they were saying something to the effect that Ukraine's security is synonymous with NATO's security, and that they have to continue to prioritize this. One of the issues, though, is Zelensky, the leader of Ukraine, of course, is being sidelined to some extent. He's been invited to one of the dinners on Tuesday, but he's not taking on a prominent role. And Ukrainian newspapers were reporting that they were concerned that this was a sign that NATO's commitment to Ukraine is weakening and that it's being distracted by other global events.
Distracted by global events such as in the Middle East, as we've talked about. How has NATO's Secretary General Mark Rutte appeared to have designed this summit around the US President Donald Trump? He knows what the US wants out of this summit and alliance.
So Mark Rutte seems to be committed to the goal of getting military spending up. And that's what Trump has been complaining about for some time now, that the other countries aren't paying their share and that the US supports some were over 15% of the budget to NATO, around 3.5 billion in spending, and that the U.S. is hoping that other countries will up their military spending somewhere similar to 5%, which is around where the U.S. is. You have some backlash to that. You have countries like Spain that are claiming that they don't want to do so and that they don't have any intention of doing so. And you only have 22 countries in NATO that have agreed to even get up to the 2% mark. And other notable countries, in addition to Spain, countries like Italy and Canada, that don't seem to be able to do so or willing to do so. So Rutte is hoping to please Trump by focusing on this military spending issue that has been a thorny issue between Trump and the rest of NATO members. But also NATO members also have to increase their military spending because they know they cannot count on Donald Trump and really in the future can't consider the U.S. As a reliable partner indefinitely as they had in the past.
So how do you think they can all come to a consensus on this? Will they? They're expected to release a very short statement this time round. What's that expected to contain?
So I think that they're going to try to promote some kind of united front, that they're committed to increasing their military spending, to undermine Russia, to address Russian aggression. But there's no way they're going to be able to decide to all have the same level of military spending as a percentage of GDP. I mean, you even have a country like the UK, which is committed to increasing their military spending, investing in nuclear warheads and so forth, but they're not going to immediately be able to get to 5%. It's just not possible. It's not in the budget. So they'll have to provide a statement that is a little bit more vague about these types of matters because there's not agreement about this. And there's also, of course, not agreement about one of the other big issues, which is whether or not Ukraine should join NATO. Most countries don't want this. There are a handful that do. And so whenever they have these types of disagreements, they have to provide statements that are a lot more broad.
And further to your point before about the 5%, Donald Trump says the US should not have to respect the goal, but the rest of the countries should. What is his argument and how much truth is there to it? And can he get away with NATO effectively having what appears to be different rules for America?
I mean, Trump is such a mess of different contradictions. It's really hard to keep track. Let's just play devil's advocate and say he has a point. He would be making the argument that the U.S. has been consistently providing the bulk of the military aid to NATO, and without the U.S., NATO can't really survive. And to some extent, you'd have to say that is true. The U.S. is really, really integral to NATO, and so he would be acting as if, well, the rest of the countries really owe the U.S. this. I think we've seen that there are different rules that apply to different countries. Some countries don't even come close to getting to the 2%. Others have been spending well over 2%. So different rules apply because it's really difficult in international relations to harmonize every single thing when countries have different domestic considerations, different security considerations. I mean, a country like Spain, they don't really feel the immediate threat of the war going on in Ukraine, where a country like Poland, of course, does. And so they've been upping their military spending for some time now.
What do European countries want specifically from the US at the summit? What commitment are they after?
Well, they want the U.S. to be more committed to the fight against Russia in Ukraine. They don't want the U.S. to abandon Ukraine, and various times Trump seems like he has abandoned Ukraine, and even echoed Russian talking points. Even worse, saying that Russia should have, sovereignty over Crimea. So they're hoping to get Trump to be more committed to the same outcomes that NATO wants with Ukraine, understanding that if Ukraine were to fall to the Russians, that this would pose a huge threat to European security, but also to American security as well.
Professor Natasha Lindstaedt, always great to have your views. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.